and verse of Nizami Ganjavi, my president declared and also this year Nizami Ganjavi. In Nizami's poetry, distinguished by the richness, content, and depth of ideas, the poet's social philosophical poems reflect his thoughts on issues such as society, environment, and individual, science, and religion. The main theme of Nizami ghazals is love, but love in this poem is real an expression of feelings experienced. Some of the poet's ghazals are also dedicated to social, philosophical, and moral issues. Nizami also wrote rubai in various topics and content. At the same time, I especially appreciate this event in terms of promoting and studying the legacy of Nizami Ganjavi in Pakistan. And I want to highlight the necessity of studying the literature of Azerbaijan and Pakistan among the youth of both countries. Our youth should study, learn, contribute, and promote the rich culture, literature, and heritage of both countries. In this context, I would like to draw your attention that great poet of Pakistan, Allama Muhammad Iqbal works is also being studied in Azerbaijan since many years. This year, the Institute of Literature, named after Nizami Ganjavi of Azerbaijan National Academy of Sciences, and the Writers' Union of Azerbaijan have published selected works of prominent Pakistan poet Muhammad Iqbal. The book includes translations of poems by Pakistani poet Muhammad Iqbal written in Urdu and Persian. And also this year, at the initiative of World Turkic Academy, Muhammad Iqbal's book, Reconstruction of Islamic Thought, was translated into Azerbaijani and published also. In conclusion, I would like to stress that these kind of events and activities are the real demonstration of our commitment to promote culture, literature of the two brotherly countries, and we should continue so. Thank you for your attention. Thank you very much.
Example, Timur's Adamiyat, a senior diplomat at the Iranian embassy in Moscow, and later Iran's ambassador to USSR, in his book, Journey to the Past, writes, on the occasion of the 750 years anniversary of Nizami's death, academic Bertels, well-known Russian Orientalist, published an article about Nizami Ganjavi in the Literaturная Gazeta in December 1953. This article, as well as other articles published at that time, claimed that the Iranian poet belonged to another nation. I wrote a letter to the editor of the newspaper asking him to explain to me on what grounds he considers Nizami an Azerbaijani poet. We can bring too many such examples when Iranian diplomats tried to follow this policy. A few years ago, Rizman Alari from Iran wrote that the Persian inscription on Nizami mausoleum could not be written in Turkish, and in the new alphabet, the repair restoration work. This was reported by the Iranian state news agency. He notes that the misappropriation of an Iranian poet by another people and the claim that he is a Turk are unacceptable. He even doubts the famous verse of Nizami, claiming that it is not a valid source for confirming his being a Turk. Nizami writes, Teber ber teber mera Turk bud, ve terzaneci her yeki Gork bud. Here Nizami clearly emphasized that his ancestors were Turks and that each of them was as wakeful and brave as a good wolf. It is incomprehensible that Iranian officials who gave a political color to the translation of Persian verses into Azerbaijani Turkish during the renovation of Nizami Mausoleum in Ganja, reacted in a strange way to a purely internal cultural issue of Azerbaijan. Nizami had some baits, very openly, very openly, said, I am a Turk and my language is Turkish language. And Turkiyan ra berin habeş neferend, واجرند دغبای خوش نخورند. اور دولت ترکان که بلندی گرفت مملکت از دادرسندی گرفت. چون که تو بیدادگری پربری ترک neyi Hindu'yu بیدادگری. If in English, the country of the Turks rose and rose. Mercy reigned in the country. You do not prevent oppression, so you are not a Turk. You are a cruel Indian. The allegations about Nizami's national identity in Iran have no basis, and such claims are not scientific but political. Nizami Ganjavi's wise words and preconceived ideas, recommendations that never lose their relevance are still important today. His rich heritage belongs to the spiritual treasure of the Azerbaijani people, and at the same time is an internal human wealth. In the end, my speech, I would like, first of all, express my deep gratitude to our ambassador, His Excellency Khazar Farhadov, for supporting and participating in such events. And of course, special thanks belong to Farhad Sahib and Asif Sahib. And another colleagues, which together made very good conference in the end of year of Nizami.
Greek poet and the philosopher Nizam Ganjavi, as you know, was born in and lived his entire life in Ganja, that is situated in Azerbaijan right now. And he received his early education in madrasa and slowly started medieval arts and sciences on his own. His journey to poetry started with the lyric poems. He was a famous ghazal and qasida writer who dedicated one of the divans to Seljuk ruler Kızıl Arslan, as you know, and he was praised gentle and always enchanted with the attractions of core life. His poem stands out with fascinating description of love and humanist thoughts about a human's destiny. Nizami was an outstanding poet, and it was not just because his fascinating ability to manage words with magic and change their structure and the meanings. And then Nizami, I can say that there was a person who had to read a lot. He did not focus on Turkish Persian and Arabic sources. He was fully acquainted with various Christian and Jewish sources. His knowledge of several languages gave him the ability to read numerous books, and a good family raised himself with the source in other languages as well. Such diverse knowledge about things gave him an opportunity to create a literary work that covered the entire cultural gamut of his times. Nizami brought about a comparable expansion of the language of poetry as well. He was among the foremost Azerbaijan poets to wear the lyric style of court poetry with its rhetorical intricacy and metaphoric density. For discourse or eloquent speech is main or principal concern. For Nizami, poets have a nearly divine, how can I say, status, yes. He repeatedly draws attention to the shaping and educative function of Sohan in his books, and goes so far as to liken his poetry to the Quran itself as a source of clear moral guidance and bold aspiration for his time. Nizami does not try to demonstrate his art, but to express himself at the moment of prayer. According to Zanjani, Nizami's strength in art lies in not strong telling, but the ability to compare moral teaching and advices as means of strengthening Islamic principles and phrases. And Nizami works as Sufi texts as well, and Nizami approach some ethical problems in terms of word of brotherhood and religious equality. The first impressive work of Nizami, the Maqsan al-Asrar, is influenced by Ghaznavi Sanayi Hakikas, Ghaznavi Sanayi Hakika, and he acknowledges this and claims that he could even surpass Sanayi in a didactical poem. The main similarities between Sanayi's poem and Nizami's are in its ethical, philosophical genre. Also, Nizami uses a metre and organizes the whole work in a different manner. But Nizami captivated the minds of numerous literary figures with Khamsa, a set of 5 poems, Treasure of Mysteries, Khosrow and Shireen, Layli and Majnun, 7 Beauties and Iskandar Name, as you know, all written in Masnavi form. Nizami's poetry is comprised of lustrous, artistic expressions of the most human, social, political, and ethical ideas of his time. And he stresses on the ideal way of life, drawing attention of his reader to the supreme rank of man among the greatest of the world. He takes the necessity to become aware of his eternal distinction into the consideration. And one of the main reasons, the Nizami's deep spirituality is always presented in his writings, and it would be hard to deny traces of Sufi learning as well. One of the main reasons behind the splendid poetry of Nizam is that he wrote his poems in the name of a humanitarian respect for people and love. Nizam says, کسی دار بنده مردم چون نباشد که از سنگ مردم میتراشد. It means that in English, how can a person who creates a human monument from stone not admire people? He seems to be saying these words to himself. Nizami admired people and managed to create a human monument from words. Nizami rightfully says به مردم دار آمیز آگه مردمی که با آدمی خکارستا آدمی. If you are human, mix with the humans, because people will go well with each other. The principles of humanism forms the basic consistence of Nizami's poetry, and he carried this idea from his first reign and continued it to the last poem. In this half-page card, Nizami addresses man. You are the angel. He addresses the man. You are the angel who defends God's prize, knows the Creator's science, and contemplate goodness. Be not bad. Observe the beast. Be not a beast. Both good and evil you can weigh. Aspire to reason's sovereignty. Nizami desires the man to be pious and truthful of his Creator's bounties. The man is the focus point of his poetry. His image of man is neither flat nor idealized. In general, his image is dynamic and full of tension, displaying through knowledge of man's psyche. His heroes are not static types. They are human beings who undergo a development drive driven by their particular disposition and emotion. They have to struggle against temptation that come from within. They had to purify themselves in order to become what the poet, here as it were in the place of God, and wants them to be crowned. At the same time, Nizami also acknowledged, at the same time, Nizami also acknowledges that human beings have always faced problems with which have influenced them and their beliefs in several respects. A crisis that comes into existence can be described as a paradox, tension and deviation from the true path. Family problems, race, ethical relationship, poetry, mental and psycho health, education, religious rage, struggles, social aggressions, and so on, all among the most important problems of every society.
My first interaction with Nizami Ganjavi was one article published by Professor Kamran Latawuf, I think his name was like that, and the other co-writer was Professor Jerry Clinton. In that article, they talk about another professor, another American professor, whose name was Alan Luther. Alan Luther was a professor at the University of Michigan. He taught Nizami Ganjavi for decades. And when he fell ill, he was terminally ill. He was very ill. He knew that he will die of this illness. But Professor Luther found courage in Nizami Ganjavi's poetry. He was on his deathbed, but he used to recite Nizami Ganjavi's poetry, which gave him encouragement, which gave him some life. So Professor Luther organized Nizami Ganjavi reading clubs in the United States. He wrote history of Azerbaijan, of Atabeks, and of all the dynasties. So he was so much affiliated. So this was my introduction to Ganjavi. I didn't know about Nizami Ganjavi before this article. And thanks to one of our best singers, Iqbal Bano, my wife, asked me to listen to one of his ghazals. So that was my introduction to Nizami Ganjavi and his universal message. His universal message of peace, humanity. Dr. Anar has beautifully described his humanistic, approach towards poetry. So you can ask me, why is that Nizami's poetry has influenced generations after generations after generations, even after almost 900 years of his birth, and almost 820 years of his passing away from this world? Why? Why is that in the East you would find his fans, in the West, in Europe? I have given you the example, and Professor Ainullah and Rashid Saab gave you example of Amir Khusro. So everywhere, people are influenced by his poetry, his writings. Why is that? Well, scholars have found the answer to it. Why? Because of his openness, because of Nizami Ganjavi's openness, humanistic values, and deep understanding of diversity that makes his poetry universal. As I noted earlier, and scholars have mentioned, Nizami was born around 1140 AD in Ganja or Ganza. It's a major town. It was a major town in Azerbaijan. It was a trading route on the Silk Road. Ganja connected major cities of Iraq, Iran, Turkey, and those to the other side, those beautiful two seas, Caspian and Black Sea. So Ganja had a strategic location. It was a trading route. So in his life, he interacted with so many people. He lived in Turkic, traditions. But his mother was a Kurd. She was a Kurdish. So he studied deeply the history of that region. He lived in Turkish, Turkic traditions, but he fully knew well about Zoroastrian, Muslim Persia, non-Muslim Persia. So he was deep into diversity. He knew fully well about the diversity of the region. He himself says, I'll give you his beautiful words of what was his influence to write poetry. He says, "From every manuscript some worth came to me. I found and embellished it with jewels of poetry. I filled up my store from the more recent history, the Jewish and Armenian, and also the Pahlavi. I took from every grain that which was excellent, and in from which pod the innermost kernel went. I joined riches of one tongue to those of another, and the mass into complete whole did I gather." So this was the influence on him of diverse cultures, diverse history, so which makes him one of the universal poets. The other important thing in his poetry is characterization of women. You will be surprised what I'm going to tell you. Although in his works, Nizami displays remarkable knowledge of philosophy, geometry, Professor Ainullah mentioned astronomy, geography, music, art, architecture, even Islamic jurisprudence, law, everything. He is a master of treating the romantic dimensions of human relations. Romance is a reality in human life. So he depicts human relations with an unprecedented depth and understanding of human psyche. He knows human psychology. I'll just speak for a moment about how women are portrayed by Nizami. Remember, we are talking about 900 years ago. In the classical period, poets at that time, poets and writers generally portrayed a negative picture of women in their literature. It was not only Persian literature or Turkish literature, everywhere women were portrayed in a negative way in literature.
You can speak longer.
Yeah.
2 minutes on it.
Okay, I'll conclude before 2 minutes. This was not peculiar to Arabic and Persian, but at that time, he broke the tradition. He broke the tradition. 3 of his 5 beautiful poems, Khamsa, long poems, everyone has referred to Khamsa, Khusro and Shirin, Layla, Majnoon, and Haft Pekar. He strikes all of us the most. His works portray women as equal members of society. 900 years ago, 800 years ago, he depicts women as equal members of our society. In the 12th century, early Muslim society, Nizami portrays women as free members of society who can participate in all sorts of activities. Nizami brings a progressive and humanistic approach to the characterization of women in society. So in Khusro and Shireen, for instance, he depicts Shireen as affectionate, strong and honest woman. She plays polo, she can go on picnics, Shireen, about 900 years ago, and she teaches her husband spirituality even after marriage. Khusro, he depicts Khusro as a weak man, but because of Shireen, she continues to educate him, train him, make him stronger. So Shireen is Khudsuye ma na did o hayara bahana sakht Zahid na dasht tabe jamale pari rukhan Kunje girift o yaad khuda ra bahana sakht. Thank you very much.
Ganjavi is very unique. And what is my understanding of Ganjavi, I could sum it up like this, that if we compare Ganjavi to other international poets, particularly in Persian language, Sufi came across few very rare things in Nizami Ganjavi. First of the thing I would like to mention is that his expression is very powerful. If we compare with others, so that consistency of what we could say powerful expression is always dominating. Readers, those who are getting signals to their spirit and their heart, they would feel it. And the second thing, which is very important regarding Ganjavi, is the depth of thought. My fellow panelists, they discuss a lot of things, different aspects. But whenever we could see that the reader is droning into the deep sea of thought of Nizami Ganjavi. So this is the uniqueness of him. And then, simultaneously, the eloquence. The expression, he is expressing his thought. And you see what I already mentioned. Statecraft is also there in his poetry. Romance is there. At the same time, we could say aesthetics. The sense of aesthetics and powerful expression in that is also visible. But these all surround his spirituality. He was properly bait with a murshid, and that is the thing that reflects the rays of spirituality from every line of the Ganjavi. And another thing, he initiated a lot of traditions in Persian poetry. I would just like to mention here, we could say that he is the one who started this Masnavi style, which is still continued. And another thing is that before Ganjavi, we see Persian poetry in a just Persianized manner, but he amalgamated Arabic style and Arabic words which were present at that time, Ganjavi's time, into the masses language. They can understand properly. So that was also his uniqueness. He also wrote qasida. But unfortunately, the follower who are coming after Ganjavi, they did not follow that qasida. Though in his Masnavi, he admire rulers, those who have impact on history, as Thomas Carlyle is saying while explaining history, that history is but the biographies of the great men. So he followed that. But in qasida, he did not do that, what people are doing today in qasida. So this is good for me to learn a lot of things because of this seminar with so many eminent scholars. I would be looking forward more such occasions, and we should include some initiatives. Your Excellency, I would like to draw your attention to this side, that we must introduce some sort of faculty and student exchange for different institutions there, particularly around Nizami Ganjavi. Thank you very much.
Nizami's work has been translated in Urdu. You can read that. It's translated in English. If you want to read that, you can continue reading and continue inspiring each other and live as harmonious as possible, as we are facing a lot of challenges for today. Thank you so much.